Whilst Crystal Palace created history and a day to remember in general for the majority of football fans, there was a loser, and that was Manchester City. The trend of City winning a cup every season has now come to an end, it seems. Some will say it's healthy for football, for competition to flow, and you're right in saying that. But it's rather concerning if City want to be that dominant side of English football, like their once noisy neighbours once were. Why is this the first time since Pep Guardiola has joined Manchester City that he's failed to win any silverware? Let's dive in and find out what exactly has happened this season with Manchester City, and why it's been a season to forget. As always, please like and subscribe the video. Let's dive straight back in. As we look at the league table right now, it's third place for Manchester City. This isn't good. It's not good whatsoever. If you give it on the likes of Manchester United or Tottenham or even Chelsea, it's a good season for them and a season in the right place. It's a foot in the right direction, but not for Manchester City. They should be finishing higher. But third is simply the best they can do, and Fulham is their last game of the season, and who knows, it could be a fourth place finish, if not fifth, if Man City fail to win against Fulham and other results don't go their way. Above them in the table comes Liverpool and Arsenal, and Liverpool themselves have Arne Slot, and he's taken a Jurgen Klopp product, and he is new to Premier League football, but taking that Jurgen Klopp product and just having a few adjustments here and there has got him a league title. But once again, Arne Slot, new to the Premier League, Pep Guardiola wasn't able to do one on him and top the team against Liverpool. Arsenal will finish in second, and they've had more injuries than Manchester City this season. Yet, why have they finished above Manchester City? Why has Mikel Arteta got a laugh, at least this time round, against Pep Guardiola? Without silverware, yes, but he will be finishing higher than Pep himself this season, and that itself was his dream and ambition at the start of the season for Mikel Arteta, that is. But Liverpool have obviously been the obstruction in the way of preventing Arsenal from winning a league title. If we go across to Manchester City, has it all been on one player this season? Losing Rodri has obviously mattered and certainly played a part, and not a good one either. But why is all the emphasis on Rodri? If there's no Rodri in the team, it seems they're a completely other weaker side. Is there a theme here of this team being about one player and having the emphasis on one player only? The likes of Rodri this season, without a doubt, should have been here and played a key role, but before it's been about Haaland, and more or less still is. If Haaland isn't on form, which he hasn't been as much as what he has been before this season, then the whole team shatters and they don't get their expected results. Now, when it comes to things like this, especially for sport, it isn't the case of who's better here, but you have to compare successes and other people in your own individual trade and field. For this case, we'll compare it to Alex Ferguson when it comes to Pep Guardiola. And the game is different. You know, both managers have been part of a completely different game. Pep is in one that is more fast-paced and more tactics are involved now, whereas Ferguson was more in a era of player performances and you know, it was more talked about on a player being good rather than the team's tactics being good when Fergie seemed to be managing. But of course, still tactics involved. Let's just take a look at that 2009-10 season for Man United where, you know, they were heavily missing some central defenders. The likes of Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic, Johnny Evans. An injury crisis that Man United didn't need. But Alex Ferguson found a way around it. He improvised with the situation and played Michael Carrick and Darren Fletcher at centre-backs at times. And it seemed to work. You know, Sir Alex Ferguson was still able to get a League Cup win that season, by beating Aston Villa 2-1 in the final. So there was still silverware to prove himself as a manager. They were also just 1 point off with Chelsea getting the Premier League title that season. But it kind of suggests, does Pep struggle to improvise at times? If we kind of give this a bit of a comparison, let's take the 1920 season. They only won the League Cup, which Fergie did as well, but they missed out on the league title for Liverpool stealing it, and it was a big gap, an 18-point gap. A defender injury crisis, just like Man United had of no Laporte. He missed most of the season. And John Stones, as always, in and out with muscle injuries. Instead, they had Nicolas Otamendi, who was so inconsistent and error-prone with that Manchester City side. You know, he wasn't as good as the others were. But I think that showed Pep's struggle to adapt to the team and you know, still getting that team to still perform. Yes, that season they won a League Cup, but when comparing Pep and Sir Alex Ferguson, the Scottish manager had a nicer and better understanding when it came to his own players. He knew who to sign, and they wouldn't be players like Doku or Nunes, who, yes, they have talent, but Alex's players elevated the team. He knew how important they would be and you know, what players would be a make or break season in terms of winning Man United silverware. But let's just take the FA Cup final, for instance. I mean, Crystal Palace were just 1 goal up. They made a substitution. Bernardo Silva came off. Ike Gundogan came on. Surely a more attacking like-for-like sub was needed there. A Jack Grealish to come on, for instance. But let's just focus on that Ike Gundogan signing, because I have a belief that Manchester City haven't really been switched on at all this season, on and off the field. The Ike Gundogan signing on a free from Barcelona, an older player who once proved his time wearing the Manchester City shirt. And other than a key player on the pitch, he was a big key player off the pitch, and I guess that's the understanding for this signing here. But why didn't City go for a player they're currently setting their eyes on right now, of Florian Wirtz? They could have signed him at the time. 100% it would have been for a huger price, but re-signing Ike Gundogan just seems lazy to me. Yes, it supports PSR, and it's also going to cost them nothing in terms of transfer fees, but for me, other players would have done a far better job in that role. This, and I think it's proved it too, hasn't been as effective and competitive as it should have been, as Manchester City should be themselves if they still want to win league titles and get back-to-back UCL titles. They should be fighting for them. They should be setting their eyes and sight out on them. And sure, they would have done this season, but a re-signing of Ike Gundogan doesn't get you that much closer to just achieving them things. You know, they should be breaking other records, becoming the first English side to win back-to-back UEFA Champions League titles in this modern 20th century era. A player like Florian Wirtz does add that great attacking ability, and he's a player who's been on form in the Bundesliga this season and seasons before, and he is going to be a great replacement. I'm sure they're going to sign him eventually, but for others who haven't showed up recently, like Foden and De Bruyne at times, and especially Grealish, you know, if Florian Wirtz was just in now, what could City been able to have achieved this season? And as far as they're concerned, City hopefully will sign him, like I say, this summer, as he's been heavily linked with him. But, you know, it's a season too late in terms of perhaps the amount of silverware they've missed this season. The whole Jack Grealish subject is another matter for this club, but Pep Guardiola quite clearly lacks the faith in the £100 million signing. You know, why have we not seen much more coming from Jack Grealish? Have Manchester City got this wrong? And, you know, not in terms of how much they've paid, they've 100% got that wrong there. You know, is any player in this world worth 100 million? But that's just the game we live nowadays in terms of the financial side. But it doesn't matter how much they could have spent for Grealish, even if they got him on a free, for instance. It's still been a failed project there, and one that, you know, Pep Guardiola just seems to not have managed to the best capability. He's not coached him in the best capability. We need more, and perhaps it's Jack's own issue himself as a player. Is he too arrogant to listen to Pep? I know nothing more than anyone else, but that maybe is just a theory or a step into why we're not seeing more and what have you. But Pep Guardiola, should he be getting more out of this £100 million signing? Or is Pep just simply off the mark, just like the club themselves? I mean, take the FA Cup final again. That crucial penalty in the first half, which really would have changed the game massively if it had gone in. What kind of culture has Pep created at this club? Or has he just left the squad just to mellow out their own culture with no say in the matter whatsoever? But what I mean by this is Omar Mamouche takes the penalty and Erling Haaland originally has the ball himself. But why does he give Omar Mamouche the penalty? Without a doubt, we should have faith in your own teammates and the players. You know, they're the players you work around you. But It's Erling Haaland. Why does he not get the chance or the say in taking the penalty? You know, this is a player who's broken a record in his first season in the Premier League. Surely he takes the penalty. And is that just a say or a view in the matter of the culture that Pep Guardiola has created here this season? But more to it is, where is the fight? Where's the urge to win here? Surely a Haaland, with the confidence he has, takes that ball and takes the penalty and looks to score it, obviously. Is that just a sight into Erling Haaland's individual lack of form and confidence right now? Or is that a say in the matter of Pep Guardiola's incompetence of managing just this one season alone? After all, Haaland is solely used in this squad. I believe the squad was all built around him in the 22-23 season to get him scoring goals, and my word, it did work. But like I said at the start of the video, if Haaland isn't on form, the rest of the team seems to not be on form either. And I think the key word in this whole video itself, and whether Pep is or not losing his own ability, is that lack of adaptation. That adaptation that Sir Alex Ferguson was able to do at times with Manchester United. But let's just spin the coin and look on the other side. It might have just been this season itself, the Premier League has just raised the bar a lot from other teams for this one season alone. Or maybe this is the start of the bar being raised for a continuous amount of times. What I mean by this is, we've had the likes of Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, Aston Villa, Fulham, Brentford and others too that have hit incredible high peaks of form at different times this season. Tactics have really weakened top managers like Pep and Arteta, and it's been great for the National League. You know, it's incredibly healthy. This is England's top division and we want as much competition as possible, especially from a neutral point of view. I think City's head of operations should see this as a failure season. Of course they will, but take some of the blame, as I think everyone of Manchester City haven't been switched on, off and on the pitch at all times this season. The actual signings just haven't been as exciting, and like I said, there's players in this team with good talent, but they don't elevate the team massively whatsoever. You know, the likes of Doku and Savinho. Maybe there's even an element of they got the appointments wrong. I think overall it was the lack of how much more they should have spent in the summer to still be a dominant side in English football. But Savinho, for instance, is a classic example. There's an issue of this multi-club ownership. The whole process and idea of multi-clubs is a great idea, but it creates issue of being unfair when the European competitions are involved, when two teams are going to meet or likely to meet there. Yeah, Savinho, for instance, he will get better, of course he will, but there's a case of we have this real good talented player here for Manchester City, but he's not having that same impact of elevating this team as others have in the past. You compare it to when Manchester City signed Riyad Mahrez, a great start of the season when he first joined, of 12 goals, 12 assists, and it just seems like he elevated the team more than Savinho has. But like I said, these appointments are appointments for the long-term picture. They're not going to maybe not necessarily have an instant impact straight away, but when you are trying to be like your once noisy neighbours once were, as dominant as them, they need to be on the mark every single season when it comes to the transfer windows. Do they need a huge rebuild this summer? The biggest one yet since Pep Guardiola has joined? Let me know down in the comments. It has been the case before with Manchester City where, you know, departures are needed and, you know, certainly needed at times. But one thing Pep Guardiola is good at and helps the team further on to be better is that quick ruthlessness of getting rid of players who start to really nestle down in the team without showing an increase in form. It's like when Raheem Sterling left. Pep Guardiola was quick to have an understanding that Sterling had to go for this whole team to still further on and become better. Raheem Sterling's still a good natural player without a doubt, and a player City fans and staff will cherish massively and still do, but Pep analysed that he had to leave. Pep doesn't have that close player attachment, and that's one of many things that does make him one of the best managers in world football, because he has then created that wisdom and less emotion to when key decisions are to be made, you know, on the basis of when players' time is up in the squad. And again, we've seen that this season with Kevin De Bruyne exiting the club in the summer. But like I said, and let's not forget in this video, this is Pep Guardiola, a world-class manager. 6 Premier League titles with Manchester City, a great treble with the club too in the 22-23 season, an FA Cup title in the 18-19 season too, and 4 League Cup titles. Let's not fool around here, as I'm sure next season we will see a classic Pep Guardiola response. I mean, we already saw that with the Bournemouth game, with the 3-1 win, which was last night as of recording this video, and Omar Marmoush scoring a contender for goal of the season. I'm sure Pep Guardiola has found that extra bit of energy because he is hurt from missing out on silverware this season. That FA Cup final has hurt Pep Guardiola, and rightly so. But you best believe it, the old dog isn't done just yet. But I think this season overall is just something that helps us when it comes to debating whether Pep is better than Fergie, or it certainly creates a talking point, as Pep and the rest of City staff have been off the mark when it comes to this season. I'm not suggesting Pep Guardiola is better than Alex Ferguson whatsoever, or Alex Ferguson is better than Pep Guardiola himself, but when it comes to it, who is better out of the two? And let me know down in the comments down below, and perhaps that's a video for the future for this channel that we will analyse in more detail. But like I said earlier, when you are talking about people and athletes and managers in a particular sport, you have to compare them to their successors, to their competitors, and you know, ex-managers as well, without a doubt. You know, who was once dominant as Pep Guardiola has been in the modern game, in the modern day? It once was Alex Ferguson. So of course we will compare the two. And Alex Ferguson himself has responded remarkably well before when Man United are having a season below their expected form. I'm sure we'll see the same with Pep Guardiola next season for Manchester City, as it is rebuild time, and what an exciting project it seems to be. There's players who do need to exit and perhaps should have gone a while back now, but already there's been a large amount of talented rumours expected to be arriving at Manchester City, or they're in the talks of signing. I mean, one that could have and should have signed, in my opinion, instead of Gundogan, is Florian Wirtz. Manchester City are hugely linked with him right now. There's also Ryan Cherki, a player who's been in great form this season with Lyon, and Morgan Gibbs-White. I mean, another rumour too. What him and the rest of the Forest team have done this season has been remarkable. He'd be a great Manchester City player, I'm sure. But who exactly should Pep Guardiola be signing in the summer? Will we see that expected fighting return next season from the Spaniard? Or is now really the time for Pep to step down? Should he have gone when Jurgen Klopp went? Let me know down in the comments below. All eyes on the Manchester City rebuild this summer. Is going to be a busy one, and rightly so too, because this has been a season for Manchester City fans to, quite frankly, forget. It's been an awful one. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Rob. This is The Footy Agenda. I'll see you in the next one.